Desert Island Discs on 91.3 Capital FM.
91.3 Capital FM, Desert Island Discs series, and as always, sharing life's incredible stories with ordinary folks that have distinguished themselves in extraordinary ways. On the program this evening, I have not just an ordinary folk, I have an extraordinary gentleman, and you will agree with me when he begins to tell his life story. None less than the ambassador of Israel to Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, and other countries. Welcome to the program, Your Excellency Oded Joseph.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm very happy to be here.
Tell us about yourself. What is it like having a portfolio with more than just one country? I mean, one country is just heavy work enough. But you are an ambassador to several countries. Maybe just tell us through the countries you represent your country to and exactly how that docket is going.
That is very correct, Simon. I'm honored to serve as Israel's ambassador in Nairobi. And our embassy in Nairobi covers, as you said, more than one country. It covers, of course, we are accredited to Kenya, to Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, and the Seychelles. So I'm actually very happy to be busy. It does keeps me busy, and I like it very much.
Feels like your day has more than just the usual 24 hours that the rest of us do have. What's your day like?
Well, it's a very busy day, and as I said, I really enjoy very busy days. I think these days, the not ordinary days, in the sense that we are all living under this pandemic.
True.
So a lot of what we have been doing usually in regular meetings today is happening via Zoom. So I think a lot of my day today is zooming with and engaging with so many people in the 5 countries that I cover. And of course, these are engagements at the political level, and we meet business people during via Zooms. Of course, journalists and the press that we're happy to talk to and engage with. So I think a lot of my day is those engagements that, rather than having them face to face, which we would all prefer, we're mainly doing that through Zoom and other means.
For the viewers, His Excellency Oded and myself agreed to take the risk to take off our masks, having gone through the usual SOPs just to have this meeting.
Yes, we will keep social distancing. We want to keep safe and healthy.
Absolutely.
Right.
And looking at this docket that you have, maybe you may just need to give us an insight into Uganda-Israeli relations and exactly what is top of mind for you in your role as ambassador. Well,
Israel and Uganda enjoy excellent relations. As you know, that we have established relations during the independence of Uganda. Some engagement happened even before the independence of Uganda. Certain engagements and certain trainings that took place during these times. But since the independence of Uganda, as I said, Israel and Uganda enjoy excellent relations in many spheres. It was interrupted a little bit during the 70s. Unfortunately, under the leadership of President Idi Amin at that time, Uganda decided to sever its relations with Israel. But thank God, under the presidency of His Excellency Museveni, the relations were renewed in 1994. And since then, they're flourishing, as I said, in many aspects. And I could, of course, be happy to detail as much as the time will permit.
Well, I mean, at this point in time, I can't just let you go off the hook without just detailing a little bit in what areas specifically are the relations flourishing and the bilateral, growth. Of course, many folks watching us would love to know where exactly are you putting your most effort.
So one, I would say the political engagements are excellent. The personal dynamics between Prime Minister Netanyahu and His Excellency President Museveni are excellent. Prime Minister Netanyahu visited Uganda more than once, just recently in February this year. And you could actually see when those two leaders sit together and meet and discuss, the dynamics is very positive. And it has a positive impact, of course, on the relations between the two countries. The engagements, the political engagements are at all levels, at ministerial levels, at working levels. So this is, I would say, one, and I think this is the basic stone that we lay as a foundation for this good relations. Number two, I would say the cooperation in agriculture. Israel and Uganda enjoy also an excellent cooperation in agriculture. Because of the circumstances, unique circumstances in Israel, scarcity of land, scarcity of water, we have managed to develop unique technologies when it comes to agriculture. And if you go and visit Israel, you would find that 2/3 of Israel is a desert. But still...
But the agriculture there flourishes like it's arable land here.
Exactly. So still we manage with very innovative technologies to make the desert bloom and to make sure that we are food secured. And this knowledge and this experience is part and parcel of what we do here in Uganda, with partners in Uganda, with experts from Uganda. In that respect, I'm always proud to mention the Agro-Studies program. Agriculture students that are graduating in agriculture in the best universities here in Uganda go for 1-year internship in Israel, go for an 11-month program in Israel. They've been allocated to different farms and they touch with their own hands Israeli technologies, are part and parcel of that farm. And with that experience and with that perspective, they come back home to Uganda and become young and successful entrepreneurs.
Wow. You'll be telling us a lot more in the area of mutual cooperation between Uganda and Israel. But I'll tell you something about this program, Your Excellency. Now we want to know who His Excellency is at a very personal level. So here we ask, who are you? Where were you born? When were you born? It may sound mundane. You could say, oh, of course, I was born in Israel. But let's find out. Was it the truth?
Absolutely, yes. I'm what we called in Hebrew tzabar. Tzabar is, yes, we, as those guys who were born in Israel. I was born in the mid-60s to both parents that both of them were born and raised in Africa. Were both born and raised in Egypt. And my mother is from Cairo, the capital of Egypt. My father is from Alexandria. My late father was born and raised in Alexandria. And both of them had to leave Egypt and wanted to leave when the modern Israel was established in 1948. In fact, my mother arrived from Cairo in 1948, immediately after the independence of the Jewish state in Israel. And my father slightly later, in the mid-50s, from Alexandria, he also came to Israel.
At that point, had they met and married, or they were still two independent young people living their life?
They met in Israel and they got married in Israel. Yes, so they have not met in. They were living in two different cities in Egypt, so they actually got to know each other in Israel.
In Israel, that was the melting pot. On the program, we play our music, Your Excellency. So at this point in time, we'll ask you to play your first song. When we return, it's more about your life story. What will be your first song?
I think my first song will be "Love of My Life."
Wow.
Of Queen, right? I think we're all, at least myself, and during the 70s, I was raised on the songs of Queen. And "Love of My Life," of course, would be dedicated for my beloved wife.
Oh, tremendous.
So I think this is really one of the more beautiful songs that I could think of.
On a Sunday evening, this is a beautiful song for a dedication, and we appreciate it. So let's listen to it and then get back to your life story. We'll be right back.
Desert Island Discs on 91.3 Capital FM.
Love of my life, don't leave me. You've taken my love,
Capital FM, it's Desert Island Discs, and we continue with the life story of Israeli ambassador to Uganda, Malawi, Kenya, Seychelles, and the United Nations, I think, operations office.
That's correct. Oh, I forgot about that. You're right.
Yes.
And Tanzania.
And Tanzania, absolutely. His Excellency Oded Joseph. Very interesting first name and surname. In this part of the country, Joseph is usually a first name. It's a surname. How so?
Yes, I know it's confusing, but that's the way it is. Yes, my surname is Joseph. And actually my first name, Oded, is first of all is a prophet. The prophet Oded, biblical prophet, and above that, Oded is also in Hebrew means to cheer someone up.
Wow.
So I think I'm trying to find myself in a position to cheer someone up, cheer other people up. I'm not sure whether I'm too successful in that, but I'm trying.
Well, at least you're
I'm
doing
trying to meet
so many countries.
And I also Oded. My parents also decided to call me Oded after my late grandfather. His name in Arabic was Awad. But when they translated it into Hebrew, they gave me the name of this. So here I am.
Wow, interesting. So let's go back to your parents meet and you were born in Israel. What was it like growing up yourself? Are you an only child to your parents? Are you an only boy? Are you a middle child? What position do you hold in your family?
I'm the second child out of 5 children, so we are a relatively big family. I do have 3 sisters and 1 brother.
Wow.
So we were always a very happy and big family. I was born second when I was 3 years old. My father used to work for the Israeli airline, El Al, and he served in Greece. So my childhood, a lot of my childhood I've done in Greece, in another country.
Wow.
Which is always a good opportunity to learn a new culture and to meet new people. In Greece, I was studying in American school.
And learn an interesting language.
Absolutely. So here's the thing, because we went to an American school, so I think what I was taught mainly English, so I was less exposed to Greek. But so as a small child, unfortunately, I did not utilize my stay in Greece to learn Greek, but I didn't learn other languages, namely English.
Wow.
But the experience is, it's a very unique experience for us. When you are abroad and you find yourself representing Israel in an international school, so that gives you a little bit of a responsibility, right? You have to present the unique culture of Israel, you have to present the unique culture of Judaism, and maybe this is already the initial signs for me becoming in the future a diplomat.
So you can see that all this came into play right from the word go. But was it something you really fancied, living abroad, interacting with different cultures of people, or do you feel you missed home?
Well, as a child, it was the reality. We were a very strong and warm family, so we were always, we were always received from our parents what we needed. I didn't feel that I'm missing anything. So as a child, for me to live abroad was a reality. And then when it evolved, of course, when we came back to Israel and we met a bigger family, a broader family in Israel, of course, my roots are in Israel, my roots are in Jerusalem. But I also found that living abroad, as I said, gives you a little bit of responsibility because it's another opportunity for you to represent Israel, its culture, its religion, and its people.
Interesting. So you were, schooled in American school in Greek, but then also moved back home, went through your normal education system. But as young people, we always have something in our minds ringing with regard to what we want to be in the future. What were some of your dreams and aspirations as a young man growing up in Israel at that time?
Well, I think that when I was a child, my real dream was to become a singer. And as you know, this didn't really happen. These were my really initial dreams. But as I said earlier, I don't know exactly when that evolved or when that developed, but being in a position that you always represent your country, represent its religion, represent its unique festivals, I think this is probably the roots of me becoming a diplomat, wanting to be in a position that you represent your government, that you represent your country, also in other spheres.
Let's play your next song. When we return, Your Excellency will be telling us the journey into diplomacy. Was it the first thing you did when you were out of school, or did you just bump into it along the way in your career path of growth and development? What is the making of a diplomat that you'll be telling us after this song? What song is it?
So let's maybe let's put Jerusalem of Gold, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. It's a song in Hebrew about the Jewish capital, about Israel, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
I'll tell you something. Lately, there's this new craze of a song, called Jerusalem. Have you learned into it?
Actually, that's another song. I thought this is another song I want us to hear.
Maybe we'll play it as a third.
Yes.
But then when we play that song, we'll have to do the challenge. There's a bit of a dance move to it. So
I think I'll have to ask you to skip. I'm not sure that I could take responsibility of my dancing.
Of your dancing.
Yes, but we are making sure that the team of my embassy will maybe meet that challenge.
Don't worry, it makes it 2 of us. I also have 2 left feet, so we can try it out.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
We'll try it.
Desert Island Discs.
Desert Island Discs on 91.3 Capital FM.
ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור
on 91.3 Capital FM Desert Island Disc Series. And yes, we continue with our conversation with His Excellency Oded Joseph, the Ambassador of Israel, that covers the area of Uganda. So, Your Excellency, you know, raised up in Israel in the 60s, in the 70s, I mean, there's just so much we read about in terms of, you know, the adversity that your country and your people did face, you know, even post your independence. And all this played out, you know, as you're also a young man growing up. And we also get to understand that everybody in your country gets an opportunity to serve the nation, maybe go to the army as a young, you know, guy before, shortly after your, you know, teenage years. Well, how did that play out for you?
Well, you're absolutely right in the sense that Israel, from its first day of establishment, was challenged. Was challenged because we were not accepted by our neighbors at the beginning. So the security challenge was the most critical one. And one of the outcomes of that is that military service in Israel is compulsory, by the way, both for men and women.
Wow, I love that.
So
all-inclusive.
All-inclusive, yes. We don't discriminate in that respect. So I think, I think so as part of my growing up, it was clear for me that I would be also serving in the army.
The military.
Because you do have to give your share in defending
your motherland.
I was an infantry officer in the Israeli army, and that is definitely part and parcel of my life and my experience in Israel, like any other person in Israel. I think people tend to ask themselves, what is the secret maybe of the story of the modern Israel? Why the success story of the modern Israel? And I believe it is really a combination of the fact that after we were forced to be 2,000 years exiled out of our motherland, out of Israel, Jews were spread all over the world. We have given, and we actually took the opportunity to get back to the natural land of Israel. So parents, for all our parents that came from different parts of the world, all of them came back to the state of Israel, to the modern state of Israel. My wife's parents came from Germany. Wow. My parents, as I said, came from Africa, from Egypt. We have other families and friends that the families came from other parts of Europe. But the fact that even though they came from different cultures, living in different countries for maybe 2,000 years, their arrival back to Israel was a very natural one, because it was coming back to the land of the Bible, to the land of the Jewish people for so many years. People, regardless of where they were praying towards Jerusalem. They were praying to be next year back in Jerusalem. They were praying to be back in the state of Israel. And that's exactly what happened in 1948. So one and very most important component of us being a successful modern nation is the fact that the culture and the religions really bonded us back again at the modern state of Israel. I think another component which was crucial is that we were under an immediate danger from our neighbors. When you have a sense of urgency, you find yourself in a position that you have to react very quickly because it's a matter of survival. So again, the combination of the sense of urgency with the fact that there was so much in common between the people who came back to the modern Israel, I think this is really part of the success story of Israel.
Let me get this right, Your Excellency. You said there was so much in common for the people that came back from different parts of the world into the modern state of Israel. But I struggle to get the sense of how. For example, you have been for thousands of years living within the German community. Your parents were living in Egypt. Some others came from, you know, as far off as Australia, even America, and came down. How were you able to preserve the very basic fabric of your existence and the identity, which is the language and the culture, that it never got lost over those many years?
You're absolutely right. It is, to a large extent, it is a miracle. And I think there is one word that explains that, and that is the Bible. Because regardless of where you lived and regardless of where you grew, and as you said yourself, you could have been in Germany and speak German all your life, or you could grow up in Egypt and speak Arabic all your life. But still, you would, at the same time, in parallel, you learned the Bible. You prayed through the Bible, and the Bible is in Hebrew. So the language was alive. We did have to modernize some of the
words.
some of the words, because there were words that were not relevant in the Bible and are relevant today in our with the technologies that we have. So there was, of course, a process of reviving the language and modernizing it. But the basic language was there, and the basic prayer towards the importance of Israel and the importance of Jerusalem was something that really united all Jews who came back to Israel. And I think I was also mentioning not only the bond that was behind or was surrounded by the Bible and the Hebrew language, and I also mentioned the sense of urgency, but it's also a decision that our forefathers have made, and the leaders of the modern Israel have made it from the very beginning, that we will take care, we will make sure that we will defend ourselves by ourselves. We will not lean on others. We will maybe get assistance from others, but we will not lean on their help. The decision to make sure that we have to take our fate in our own hands was a very important decision that our forefathers have made, and I think this is again part of our success story.
Tremendous. Now we've seen the broader aspect of the determination of Israel to survive and thrive. Now let's get down to you and your contribution to that grand vision. So you served through the compulsory military service. You're an infantry, soldier in the Israeli army. And then how then did you chart your path through your career, your education? Just share with us.
I've immediately after my military service, I also was sent by the Jewish agency to serve in the UK, and I had the chance there to meet young Jewish British sorry.
I like the duopoly, the young Jewish British.
Right.
Exactly.
And so part of what I've done is trying to get to know communities that lived abroad, Jewish communities that have lived abroad. And of course, part of our discussions and part of what we have done is really to see how, as Jews living in Britain, how they are still connected to Israel, how they're still connected to Judaism. Some of them decided also to emigrate back to Israel. So I think this is a project that really exposed me to other communities, other Jewish communities around the world. And that was for me a very significant and a very important portion of what I've done in my life. After that, I studied at the university, Hebrew University. I've studied political science and Middle Eastern studies. Again, getting to know better the region, getting to know better the politics, and
was that your motivation, or it was thrust onto you? Say, you mean here, in our case, sometimes your parents choose what you have to study.
No, well, definitely was my motivation. I don't believe in having a meaningful education if it doesn't come, if it's not part of your motivation. I think it's very difficult to be imposed to study something, to be imposed to do anything.
Yes.
So of course I respected my parents, and they might have had other preferences, but I think at the end of the day, you're a grown-up and you have to take responsibility on yourself, and you have to make your own preferences, and that's I think that's exactly what I've done. I did get the support, by the way, of my parents.
Wow. So
I really enjoyed the studies, and I think this also brought me closer into political life, into diplomatic life. And immediately after I've graduated, I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
wow.
And became a young diplomat. And today, after more than 25 years, I'm really enjoying every day of what I do as a diplomat.
You are cut out for this stuff. Let's play our next song, and when we return, now we see your journey of the last 25 years and how you have grown from a young, officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs now to an ambassador.
Right. Is derived from Psalms chapter 34, which I think discusses really the morality of the human being, the basic character that every human being should have. And let me just read it. Let me read the right portions of Psalms 34. And I think you would find the song very interesting.
Tell us.
So it says, "Who is the man that desireth life, and love the days that may see good therein? Keep thy tongue from evil, and thy lips from speaking guile. Depart from evil, and do good. Seek peace, and pursue it. I think for me, these are the best way to characterize what every human being should be. We should all seek for, if we want to seek life, we have to seek for peace, and we have to make sure that we do not speak evil and do evil.
Wow, that's a very interesting motivation. Let's find it and then get down to get the Sunday motivation as it should be. I mean, if everyone lived by those words, we would have the most peaceful existence in the world.
Absolutely.
Desert Island Discs on 91.3 Capital FM.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me from every fear.
Right, 91.3 Capital FM, Desert Island Disc Series, and yes, we continue with our conversation with His Excellency Oded Joseph, the Ambassador of Israel, whose docket includes Uganda, among many other countries within the East African region and slightly beyond. So here you are, you go through the motions of education, you do your national service, and finally you land at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a young diplomat. How was it like at that time, diplomacy, representing a country like Israel? Like you said, it's a heavy yoke of responsibility when you have the Star of David, somewhere on your lapel.
Well, absolutely. I think this is really one of the most exciting things that I've done in my life, becoming a diplomat, deciding to become a diplomat. I think being a diplomat puts you in a very unique position. You're really in the process that you are able to be exposed and to shape the national interests of your country by representing it in other countries, by engaging with other leaders, by engaging and getting to know other cultures. And I think the fact that you always use the same tools, the diplomatic tools, but you exercise them in different places, I think is one of the most important and interesting characterization of a diplomatic life. So you have to become a professional diplomat, but you get to exercise it in totally different environments, and you get to know all the time new environments and new cultures. And I think this is really what keeps me moving as a diplomat.
Your growth through the years. So you enter in entry point position of young officer.
Right.
Now you have raised, and from the bio that I've read about you, you've served your country with distinction in such places as Washington, D.C., Singapore, Moscow, and now here you're giving back to Africa, where your parents came from.
Correct. Exactly. I did start
journey?
as a very young diplomat in Singapore. I was married with 2 small daughters.
Wow.
So this was on its own a challenge to come as a family. And this is my first position. I've done my first position in Singapore, Asia. And then when I've matured, I've done my service in Moscow. So I've also
So
served
in Singapore, were you ambassador or you were one of the staff at the
No,
embassy?
I was deputy ambassador,
Okay.
but relatively a junior position at the embassy. It was my first position,
Okay.
and as I said, with a very young family. The other position I held was in Moscow. So totally different environment, totally different culture.
Absolutely.
Totally different challenges, but again, it was
And different interests for you.
very interesting, absolutely. And then another position. Every time you grow up a little bit, so you go the ladder, you climb a little bit higher on the ladder. But then the other position abroad was in Washington, D.C. So as I said, I did have the chance to serve in 3 different continents. And becoming an ambassador in the 4th continent, in Africa, was really for me a nice way to round up my service abroad. But you don't, as a diplomat, you don't only serve in abroad. You also, of course, have different positions in Israel.
Exactly.
So I had also in Israel a very interesting diplomatic life. Part of it was a researcher at the research and intel leg of the foreign ministry. I was covering at that time as a researcher the Eurasia area, so the Soviet Union and the republics of the Soviet Union, who then became independent.
Independent, yes.
So this was one very interesting position that I held. I also had the chance to to head the department that dealt with the Eurasia countries, those Soviet republics that became independent, so covering 5 countries in Central Asia, which also was very extremely interesting, and positions within the Prime Minister's office and the Director General's office and the Minister for Foreign Affairs. So as I said earlier, you change positions every time, but what is in common is that the fact that you exercise professional diplomatic tools. What is different is the environment and the new areas and cultures that you get to be exposed in. I think that's the secret of why life of a diplomat is always very, very interesting.
I'll bring you now to the workings here. Running 3, 4 countries, 5 countries, huge geographical space, different cultures and dispositions of people. How are you able to split your time and how run, between the different countries that you represent? So today you are in Uganda, tomorrow you will be down to Tanzania, then Malawi, then Seychelles. Have a good time there. And what is it like? I want to wrap my head around your typical itinerary, so to speak.
Well, as you said, it's very, very hectic, and one of the things you need to learn as a diplomatic with such a hectic schedule is you have to make sure that you set your priorities right, and that you manage your time in a very efficient way. So I think part of what I try to do is really to set those priorities and to manage my time. But there's also something very nice about having this dynamic daily life, about this dynamic scheduling. Because you're always you don't have time to waste time.
I like that.
So you have to make sure that you are to the point, that you know exactly what you want from each of the meetings, exactly what you want to achieve, whom exactly you want to approach, because you want to make sure that you are reaching your objectives in the most efficient manner.
But also you were a father, raising children throughout the diplomatic career, swinging children from one continent to another and all that. How have you been able to, perform that role, even with the interruptions that come with it? And let's also not forget that your dear wife is in gainful employment. She's a scientist doing all these incredible technological advancements in that area. So I can imagine what parenting must be on your end.
So that's a very tricky question, because I think you would have to ask my wife and my children, how good am I as a parent and as a husband. I'm not sure I want you to call them right now, because I'm not sure I want to hear their answer live. So, but I'm trying to be a good husband and a good father. I'm very proud of my wife. She has her own career. She is a scientist. She's a biologist. She's in the field of. She's a genomist. And now, these days that we're all being challenged by this pandemic, her lab at the Hebrew University is also naturally focused on how Israeli scientists could contribute to, one, either finding a vaccine, or two, trying to find more efficient and effective ways to do the testings in a manner that we could learn in a much more efficient manner how to deal with this pandemic. So she has, as I said, a very busy schedule on her own. And as I said, I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud of my 4 children. Each and every one of them is growing up to become an independent girl or a boy.
Any of them thinking of being a diplomat?
Well, I don't think so. I didn't see any initial signs. I think they're more in the field of becoming doctors and becoming lawyers and but again, as I said earlier about myself, I might have my own preferences of what they do, but at the end of the day,
they're grown-ups
and they make their own decisions, exactly.
Tremendous. Your Excellency, as we now wrap up this program to go into the next phase, you will have to, now we look at you as a person, the things that you love to do, the things that tick you off, the things that get you going.
As you said, being a diplomat is the schedule. I have a very, very tight schedule. But you were asking what are the ways for me to relax? What are the ways for me to be
absolutely. I mean, with all this, how do you relax? How do you?
First and foremost, I think now being here in East Africa, one of the things that I'm very excited about is the opportunity to travel. I love hiking. I love climbing the mountains around. And I'm trying every other weekend to find another nice track, whether it's in Kenya or in the other countries that I'm accredited to. So I think this is one of the things that I really love doing.
Before you leave Uganda, if you haven't climbed the Rwenzori, this is our highest mountain right on the equator. And guess what? With snow every single day of every year.
Wow.
up there.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't been there, you haven't been anywhere.
No, that's absolutely. That's part of my bucket list from this minute onwards.
Very good.
How high is the mountain?
Well, I don't think I have the meters of fire, but it is. I think it will be the third highest range
Right.
in the East African region, also only rivaled by the Kilimanjaro. I'm not so sure how high it is in comparison to Mount Kenya, but the Rwenzori is something else. It's epic.
Well, definitely in my bucket list, I need to have the three highest mountains in East Africa. So there will be Kilimanjaro, of course, which is I think is 6,200 meters, and then we have Mount Kenya, which is in my, of course, in my bucket list, which is slightly lower than 6,000, around 5,900, and the mountain of
The
Rwenzori,
Rwenzori, or we call it the Mountains of the Moon.
which we have to find out how high it is. But you
Well,
said
it's
a
something slightly. It must be 5,800 something. I don't get my geography right off my hand, but it's certainly not a short peak.
just added to my bucket list.
Wow, there you have it. But beyond that, there's plenty of stuff to see in terms of flora, fauna, the just physical features of this country. And I would invite you to take a moment, to travel the length and breadth, not just to see the physical features, but also meet the people.
Absolutely, that's one of the nicest things that you could do as a diplomat, that you get to know those cultures and new people. So every opportunity I have, that's exactly how I'm occupying myself with.
For many of my guests who sit on that chair, ask them what their favorite dish is. I'm not so sure. You have a favorite Ugandan dish. Have you tried out Ugandan cuisine?
I should learn more about Ugandan dish, definitely. So I want to be exposed more to Ugandan dishes.
Something is right, cuts across all of us. We love our meats. So I'm sure some Ugandan mutton could rival that from Israel.
There's
Beef, same story. Chicken, beautiful stuff. But then we have our, carbohydrates, something called matoke. If you could add that to your bucket list.
I will, absolutely. And there's nothing like a very good steak. So I'll definitely try also, as you said, the local meat. But of course, I'm open to other new dishes for me. Any new dish, I'll be happy to be exposed to.
Your Excellency Oded, we also, of course, appreciate that beyond being a diplomat, beyond being an astute person, you have personal character dispositions that define you as an individual. If I may ask, what gives you a good laugh? What makes you happy?
I think what makes me happy is to see my children happy. I think this really is the one thing that there's nothing could compete with that. Because at the end of the day, what you want for your children is to be healthy and to be happy. To make sure that they feel that they accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and that they feel good about themselves. I think this is really what drives my day.
Right there, you just answered my previous question. Rating yourself as a dad. And you just now told us your ratings. I think on a scale of 0 to 10, you should be somewhere above 11.
Well, thank you very much. I hope my children will agree with you.
Well, I hope they do. If they don't, I will be surprised. And let's look at the flip side. What gives you a frown on your face? What makes you angry?
I think what could make me angry is to see people that either lie to me or that they're lazy. I think these are the two things that is very difficult for me, because that means that they don't care about what they do, or the motivations are not the right ones. So I think when it comes to engaging with people, feeling that I've been lied to, or zero motivation, could really make me angry and disappointed.
Your name, Oded, is the name of a prophet. So we're going to do a bit of prophecy here, and I'll ask you to do the prophecy. But also importantly, your surname, Joseph, is symptomatic, or should I say, is the embodiment of a story from grass to grace. The story of Joseph, we all know it. So if I may put it to you, Oded Joseph, where do you see yourself, perhaps in the next 5, 10, 20 years, 50 years?
Well, two things. I hope to continue with my successful diplomatic career.
It's true that.
And I'll be happy to serve back here in Africa, to stay here in Africa. And I hope to be with many, many grandchildren. So this is, if you're talking about, again, my children.
The right
if there's one, yes, if there's one thing I'm asking them is not to be lazy in that front. So they should start working and making sure that I become a grandfather very, very soon.
And you have done quite a good job here. Your dad just beat you to 1, you are 5, you have 4. So if your children have 4 each of the bare minimum, there are 16 grandchildren.
Absolutely. 4 for each of them is the minimum. I agree with you.
Your Excellency, Oded, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you
It's
very
been a
much.
pleasure getting to know your life story. But most importantly, it's been a pleasure getting to put a face to the name and realizing that an Israeli ambassador is actually as human as they come.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed in your program. Thank you very much, Simon.
But before you exit, somewhere along the way in our conversation, I did seem to cut you short when you were going down enumerating Israel-Uganda bilateral engagements. You talked about agriculture, you talked about some, corporations in other areas. Would you mind to elucidate more so that maybe for our listeners and viewers, they really appreciate that when you are in Uganda, you have your bucket full of many things to do?
Well, let me again a little bit discuss a little bit again the cooperation on agriculture, because I think it's really one of the more meaningful cooperations that we have. I was mentioning the agriculture students that arrive in Israel for an 11-month program, and when they arrive back, they are really the best human resource to become agripreneurs here in Uganda.
Wow.
But also other very nice projects that are taking place. There is an Israeli company that is trying to build the concept of kibbutz here in Uganda. Kibbutz was this combination of young Israelis coming to Israel, becoming young agripreneurs, and at the same time building community life. And I think this is a concept that works very well also in Uganda. A company in Israel is trying to get more and more youngsters to build up kibbutzim in Uganda, which I think is a great project that takes place in Karamoja area and in Chiboga area, and I hope to see that in other places in Uganda. Health cooperation, naturally under the pandemic, the COVID-19 that we're all faced by and challenged by, is becoming more and more an important component of our cooperation. So we're doing much more discussing together what is it that we could do, and learning from each other's lessons and experiences and perspectives in the field of health. Tourism, as we speak, this was one of the two goals that both His Excellency the President and the Prime Minister Netanyahu defined for our cooperation. As we speak, we see tangible and practical talks taking place between Israel and Uganda to have the first direct flights between our two countries.
Wow.
And this would boost very much the relations. This would allow tourists from both sides to visit the respective countries. This would allow more and more business people to arrive from Uganda to Israel, and from Israel to Uganda. And of course, it's a cultural exchange between the peoples. So I'm very much looking forward to see those direct flights taking place between our two countries. We can go on to IT and innovation. Research that we are doing together, and we could do much more. So I think the sky is really the limit for having our relations being taken a few steps forward. We are also honored now to have, and we just recently appointed a honorary consul, an Israeli honorary consul here in Uganda, Miss Ishta Muganga. She's very active, and she's working very hard with us to advance the relations between our two countries and our two peoples.
Incredible. We also have a little enclave of a Ugandan Jewish community. Have you heard about it?
Absolutely,
Have you
the
been to
Buyadaya, of course. I've met the community.
Yes.
I'm very proud of this community. Again, you would see this is another illustration that though Jews were spread all over the world, they have something that bonds them together.
True.
There is something in the culture and the religion, the Bible, that really bonds them together. And I'm happy to say that the Bible, the holiest book that we have, is not bonding only Jews among themselves, but I think one of the strongest cements of our relations between our two countries is that both cultures, both peoples in Uganda and in Israel, we have great respect towards the Bible. We have great respect to its values, and I think this really puts us and bonds us together.
You told me earlier on that your last song, especially for the dancing pleasure of our listeners, will be the Jerusalem song.
Absolutely.
That we would love to do a challenge to. You already hung your boots, you're not ready to do the challenge, but nonetheless we'll play that song. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you something else.
Tell
This
me.
is a privilege that I have as an ambassador. There are tasks that I find that uncomfortable to do myself, So I do ask my team to do it instead of me. So as we speak, will be trying to also meet the Jerusalem Dance Challenge.
Dance Challenge. We'll be waiting to see the videos training online, and then we'll try out and see who did it better.
I'll make sure you will see that movie. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank
For
you.
your listeners and viewers, it's always a pleasure having you listening in and watching in. We don't take that for granted. Let's meet same time, same place next Sunday with yet another incredible life story from a folk that has distinguished themselves.
Desert Island Discs on 91.3. Desert Island Discs on 91.3. Capital FM.